What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the Opinionated Hippie, and this is part 3 of my reviewing and ranking David Bowie's studio albums. I'm breaking them up in terms of the box sets that were released over the past decade. So I did 5 years, the first 7 albums, and I did Who Can I Be Now, the next 3 albums. And this is the box set for the New Career in a New Town. It covers the 4 albums from the Berlin Trilogy on through Scary Monsters and Super Creeps. So I'm going to review those 4, rank those 4, and then I'm not going to tell you where those 4 rank in the overall picture of Bowie. I'm going to save that for the very last video, and do that all at once, just because. But anyways, that's it. Yeah, not much more than that. These 4 albums are all fantastic. Like, I would imagine that you could get a group of like 4 people, and each person could have maybe a favorite one of these. This is definitely a ranking of favorites and not a ranking of quality. I think they're all stupidly fantastic albums. So yeah, that's it. Also, how do we get here from Frank Zappa? Adrian Belew played in with Bowie. Dunbar played with Bowie. I think Bowie covered some Zappa early on. I think people mentioned in some of the comments that were left on the other videos. So there's Let's Dance, Put on Your Red Shoes and Dance the Blues Away, a big nuclear explosion at the end of the video. All that stuff. Good stuff, people. All right, be in my video. Yeah, that's it. All right, on to number 4. My number 4 is Heroes, his 12th album that came out in 1977, on my dad's birthday, by the way. And I don't use my dad's birthday for any of my passwords, people, so I'm giving away that information. So anyways, I also don't talk to my dad, but that's a whole other story. Yeah, this album has Robert Fripp on it, and we're just going to say that the Fripp effect is in full effect, and anytime Fripp steps up and plays his guitar in any sort of manner or fashion, things are going to get good, and things are going to get interesting, and things are going to get exciting. That is also the case for another album in this series in which the Fripp effect is in full effect. This album is similar to Low, which is also on this list, in that you have a more conventional, in the terms of Bowie, side A, and a more less conventional in the terms of anybody, side B, with the side B focusing more on like instrumentals and ambient pieces and these really kind of dark, brooding, moody pieces with lots of space and just long, drawn out notes. I think the Low overall effect of the album Low, which has a lot of shorter songs on side A, it's a much more eclectic, all over the map, but kind of more in a rock genre, where side B is this stark difference of just these kind of depressing, kind of just gray type instrumentals. That sort of contrast between side A and B is so much more powerful on Low. Here it's a little bit diluted because on side B you're opening up with a track called V2 Schneider, which feels a little more like it could just be a normal regular song on an album, has kind of a little maybe happier, kind of a groove to it. And then you get 3 pretty moody, intense instrumental tracks on side B. Sense of Doubt, which will put seeds of existential doubt in your very soul and kind of make you unsettled and anxious and not feel good for a good 3.5, 4 minutes. And then the other 2 tracks, Sense of Doubt bleeds into Moss Garden, and then that segues with these weird, almost electronic wind sounds into New Cologne, I'm assuming, the city Cologne, New Cologne, possibly. And those all feel like instrumental songs you would hear if you were like in a castle in Mordor, and that would be like the elevator music. Just like, no, this isn't good. I'm not feeling good. The third piece, there's a little more hope that's coming through at the end of New Cologne. I think we get some saxophone that drops in there. And it almost feels like, okay, maybe there's a little bit of hope in the world by the end of it, but it's still a really dark sort of trio of songs. And then it ends with The Secret Life of Arabia, which is just kind of a dance groove. And you can almost see that if they played this song live, like Bowie just dancing between verses, between lines, and then coming up and singing a line and coming back. Like it's got movement and it's got swing. So the second half of Heroes, the reason it falls to 4 is I think Low being a similar album, the contrast in Low I think is more intriguing. And here it almost like they diluted a little bit of it on side 2 to just make it a little more palpable. But it's still a fantastic side of music. Side A is just your 5 just really good, weird art rock, kind of a little bit of dance thrown in, a little maybe new wave thrown in, a little maybe post punk thrown in, but just Bowie music, right? Opens up with Beauty and the Beast, which has this nice build up with this piano energy. It's almost like we're ramping into the song and then we drop in just this high energy sort of weird art rocker. And then Joe the Lion, same thing, some great Frippisms in there, but again, it's just this weird kind of pseudo-aggressive art rocky type song, maybe a little more of a dramatic vocal as Bowie's telling the story of Joe the Lion. Then we get just the iconic Heroes with that just fantastic Fripp guitar part, just the vocals, the vocal performance. This is Bowie just standing and singing and being Bowie, man. Another iconic Bowie song. We get Sons of the Silent Age, which is this like woozy type of like space ballad type thing that just feels like we're slowing things down, but we're a little bit just, it's got a wooze about it that's really good. And then Blackout's a little more frantic, Closer, a little more hyperactive, a little more just kind of type high energy, frantic energy to close out side A. And then we get the instrumental stuff on side B, other than Secret Life of Arabia and some V2 Schneider and V2 Schneider. Great album, fantastic. I just think the overall effect of the other three is better. And in comparing it to Low, which I think is the obvious comparison, they were released back to back. This is the second of the two. I do think the difference between the side A and B, the starkness of the difference in Low benefits Low in a way that this doesn't benefit Heroes, if that makes sense. But that's why it's at my number 4. But it's a fantastic album. On to number 3. Oh, and really quick, I love the fact that the title of Heroes is in quotes. Genius. Don't know why. Genius. My number 3 of this group is his 13th album, 1979's Lodger. This is the third of the Berlin trilogy, but it definitely feels like a conduit between like Heroes and Scary Monsters and Super Creeps. We don't have the instrumental sort of experiments that we had on the previous 2 albums, but we're also definitely not maybe as pop oriented or even more mainstream as Super Scary Monsters flirts with, but then ultimately defies. But this is a fantastic album, and I think the title of it, there is a massive, all of these box sets have really, really, really good books that are like really kind of lots of details. I haven't read them. I usually don't read this stuff. I don't know why. It's just the music that I care about. But we had a big snowstorm a couple years ago where we lost electricity for like literally days at a time, and it was friggin' miserable. But I read like about 20 of my box sets that I had never read. One day I just sat around and literally read all of them. We're supposed to have another one of those this year, so I might read this. But I don't know why it's called Lodger. But what it to me sounds like, it sounds like this is almost like a musical travelogue of Bowie's journeys, both literally physically in the world and also musically. And he's taking all of these different components, as he always does, and just kind of putting them into this art rock album where we're like, oh, that's a little bit of like world music. That could be on a Peter Gabriel album, like the second track, what is the name of it? African Night Flight. That could be right on a mid-period Peter Gabriel album. Maybe a little more Bowie-esque, but it works. Move On is has like a 50s vibe, almost like a Buddy Holly vibe, but updated decades later with a massive Bowie spin on it. Yasa Sin has both this weird pseudo reggae groove with this keyboard part that just kind of lingers in the back that gives us this little Middle Eastern or maybe half European, half Asian vibe, since Yasa Sin is apparently Turkish for long live. Apparently a Turkish word, so maybe this was inspired out of him visiting Turkey. A DJ on the second side and both Repetition have some hardcore Talking Heads vibes, early Talking Heads, both sort of the post-punk / new wave energy and the delivery of Bowie, maybe trying to sound like Burn. Red Money has some darker guitar psych energy. There's a dance vibe in a lot of these, like Look Back in Anger kind of leans into like this hard rock, art rock dance energy. He would open the Serious Moonlight tour with that, and it's just high energy, everybody's grooving type thing. It's just a really interesting album with all of these different songs that each feel a little bit different, but at the same time, all just kind of sound like Bowie. Um, it opens up with Fantastic Voyage, which is kind of this mid tempo, not coming out too aggressive. It's just kind of an easy going, but kind of confident. Like, I don't need to hit you hard with something. I think you're already with me on this journey. Let's go on this fantastic voyage. And then the second song, African Night Flight, all of a sudden we're all like frantic and crazy and things are weird. But it's a nice opener, kind of welcomes you into what this journey is going to be. But then the lyrics of Fantastic Voyage are just like, I don't want to deal with like your depression. It's like somebody like being like, I don't got time for your like red flags right here. So then you're like, musically, you're like, oh yeah, I'm with you. And then lyrically, you're like, okay, it's still a Bowie album. So it's still going to be some intense topics. But yeah, it's just a really, really good listen. I think DJ is absolutely one of his best songs. Opens up side two. Fantastic. Look Back in Anger. Boys. Whole thing about whether or not boys can wear uniforms and other boys are going to like you if they're in your uniform. Yeah, just all around really good songs. It doesn't have like a hook or a gimmick. I don't think there's any really one thing that stands out more than any other. I think on side A, Move On, that maybe a one that has a little bit of 50s Buddy Holly somewhere in there, I think is the strongest. I think DJ is the strongest on side two. But from start to finish, this is one of those that I think didn't immediately grab me. And had I done this like 20 years ago, Low would have been 4 and Heroes would have been 3. But over the years, this is what I'm kind of drawn back to a little bit more. And I'm just finding a little more nuance in it, a little more devil in the details. It's really making me happy. But yeah, just a really, really interesting album. And the whole travelogue thing about it is you can't really pinpoint any one particular thing. Like, even though you're finding these connections that might be from different parts of the world or from different parts of the musical world, all of it is Bowie-fied. So it seems like there's a different map that Bowie's on that none of us ever like visit, and this is Bowie's experience in this world that only Bowie knows about, but now he's reporting back to us, and he's only a lodger in these places. I did read once, I think I remember, it wasn't in that book, that this was him, like, he was only living in Berlin and he never really felt like he was a part of Berlin, and now he's maybe going somewhere else, so he was just a lodger there, and now he's got to move on. I think he went to like Hollywood or LA or something, maybe, I don't know. But anyways, yeah, it's a really, really, really solid album. But that's my number 3, Lodger. My number 2 out of this group of 4 is 1977's his 11th album, Low. This is the first of the 2 that has the side A of, I'm not going to call them straightforward rock songs, but more conventional sounding art rock songs. And then a side B of instrumentals. And the instrumentals on this one, the sort of ambient noises, there is some made up words in it, if I'm not mistaken, right? I think someone thought it was Polish at the end of Warsaza. It's not. I think it's made up language. Someone else said it was Esperanto. I actually took a semester of Esperanto at Cal. That was a mistake. That was horrible. But anyways, it is just such a compelling, intriguing side of music, following the utter random, eclectic genius that is side A. But side B, the instrumental stuff, starts off with Warsaw, about Warsaw. Apparently, Bowie was driving through Warsaw or drove past Warsaw, and it was bleak and desolate, behind the Iron Curtain. And so this instrumental evokes that. Like, it is unsettling, it is gloomy, there is despair in this. It's just not a very, it's unsettling. And then the following track is Art Decade. And I don't know what the Art Decade specifically is, but it starts off with this same sort of somber, kind of depressing, gloomy vibe. But then there are these pockets of sort of inspiration, like hope, like these more like major sounding like ideas that pop up. And it's almost like the art that is created in this like otherwise environment of despair, the art is hope, creativity is hope, what we can bring like through our music or through our writing or through anything, that is the hope. And so coming after Warsaw and Art Decade, I'm thinking that's maybe the narrative that goes through it. Then we get to Weeping Wall, which should be depressing, but there's this almost percussive pitter patter that kind of goes through the whole thing that kind of reminds me of tears falling. Like, it's the sound of just constant tears falling, but it's not a it's not a depressing or sad vibe. It's almost just like, yeah, you need to weep, you need to get it out. The weeping wall is there for a good purpose. Like, it's letting us grieve, it's letting us get these negative energies out of our system. And so it's another weird sort of like progress from Warsaw, which doesn't offer any hope at all, to like, oh, but maybe art can do it, or maybe the act of grieving can do it. And then we get to Subterraneans at the end, which feels like we're underground, feels dark and gloomy and like kind of constricted. But then there's this saxophone that pops it at the end, which maybe represents the light at the end of the tunnel. Like, look, there's something, there's hope. So I don't know. It's an incredibly awesome 4-song journey, the side B of this album. Side A of this album is an equally awesome 7-song journey. The craziness that is the instrumental Speed of Life, which is just this awesome, weird art funk rocks thing. Breaking Glass, a more straightforward, awesome song. What in the World kind of has a really, really nice groove to it. Sound and Vision, which is just like Danceville, man. Just such an awesome groove. Always Crashing in the Same Car. The fantastic Be My Wife. Just another awesome hook-laden Bowie song. And then we close out with A New Career in a New Town, whence the box set. How the box set got its title. Like, the longest song on there is 3.5 minutes. Like, these are really just like ideas. We're going to play them until they run out. We're not going to try to embellish them. We just got 7 songs in less than 20 minutes. We got hooks, we got rockers, we got just dance grooves. We got a little bit of everything. Like, side A of Low is just such a fun ride. It's almost like a bunch of sampling, a bunch of different Bowie just greatness. And then you go into the awesomely depressing side B. I don't think it works as well as a CD as it does on actual vinyl. I think the process of like listening to side A, having to literally physically turn over an LP and like a piece of vinyl and like listening and then like sitting down going, okay, now I got side B. Like that immediate segue where you don't have to switch anything. I don't know. I think it robs side B of even more of its power. This album was made to be played on vinyl and to listen to both sides back to back. That's what you should do. This is a near perfect album, people. My number 2, Low. My number 1 is Scary Monsters and Super Creeps. And this is a perfect album. This is his 14th album, came out in 1980. Yeah, it's just 10 perfect art, rock, weird pop, sci-fi, I don't know. They're David Bowie rock songs, all right? It's not straightforward rock by anybody's stretch of the imagination. It's art rock. There's a little bit of almost like folk sing-along on Up the Hill Backwards. Ashes to Ashes is this great little electronic space funk. Fashion lays down a hardcore groove. Yeah, it's a perfect album. Side A might be a perfect sequence of music. Opens up with It's No Game, number 1. It's No Game, number 2 closes out the album. It's No Game, number 1 has like some a female singing some Japanese lyrics. Bowie is literally just screaming the lyrics in this one. The album closes with a much more straightforward, no nonsense, bass guitar driven. Bowie's just kind of calmly delivering the lyrics version. Slightly different lyrics, but for the most part, the same lyrics. Great way to open it up. And to open up with the in-your-face intensity, kind of a really weird song, and then close out with a nah. We're just going to lay down and hug this one out as we go home. Just great Choices. This is not a good album to listen to in the car. The title track has this weird beep, beep, beep that goes through it that if that song ever comes on and I'm sitting at like a traffic light, I always think that somebody's backing into me and I got to move. And then It's No Game, after the song ends, has these weird sort of noises that kind of pop up. And I always think like my car hit something. It's like this weird, something weird. I think that's this album. Yeah, that's this album. It's No Game opens up fantastic. Then Up the Hill Backwards, one of the coolest songs. Starts off with this almost like boom, Bo Diddley type beat, and then it switches and becomes almost this like folk sing-along type thing where there's a bunch of people singing this like choral type thing. Really neat groove that we kind of go back and forth between these vibes for the whole thing. It's kind of a really fun song. The first time I saw Bowie was on the Glass Spider tour, which was just a nightmare of sorts, but one of the most fascinating nightmares ever. There is a live video of a professionally shot live video of the Glass Spider tour on YouTube. You need to watch that. There's like actors and Bowie's got lines and they're acting out like this West Side Story type scenario. It was friggin' weird. I remember loving it at the time. I've gone back and watched that video a couple times because it is so fascinatingly just, Bowie's a strange person, but it's kind of works. Oh, but that was the first song. They opened up with Uphill Backwards. And so that was the first time I'd ever heard the song on that tour. I had not heard it prior to that. And I loved it, even though Bowie wasn't singing it. It was a bunch of like actors. But it was weird. Scary Monsters and Super Creeps, just the song sounds like the title. It's weird. It's aggressive. It's funky. Fripp is doing some of the greatest Fripp things you've ever heard. This is one of the other Fripp albums. Fripp's on like 7 of the tracks on here doing Fripp stuff. Ashes to Ashes. How many songs get a sequel? How many songs get a sequel that sound nothing like the original song, yet at the same time evoke sort of the same isolated, alone, almost just, We're definitely now, Major Tom now has a drug addiction. This song is definitely more about being addicted to drugs. The lyrics are incredibly sort of heartbreaking and depressing, but the vibe is just boop, boop, boop. It's just, I mean, what a fantastic song. And then to think, Peter Schilling would do a Major Tom Coming Home, would do another sequel. This song is a trilogy. Fantastic. Then we get Fashion, which is just one of those great David Bowie dance numbers with weird guitar energy. Fashion, it is really super cheesy at times and shouldn't work, but because it's Bowie, it does. Teenage Wildlife kicks off side 2, has a Heroes vibe in it with that guitar part. It has those long drawn out notes like Heroes does. It almost reminds me of like a Kurt Weill meets Heroes because you have a lot of guitar energy between the courses. And so it just has this long, extended, loose Kurt Weill playing the guitar on the beach type vibe, but more weird parts per Bowie. Scream Like a Baby, one of my favorite courses. Scream like a baby. Kingdom Come, a great cover. This is how you do covers, man. This is from a Tom Verlaine album, solo album, which came out like the previous year. So he's not taking this song everybody knows. He's taking a song probably nobody knows. He's giving it some really good energy. Fantastic cover. Because You're Young, another fantastic chorus. And then the album closes out with It's No Game, number 2. A fantastic, near perfect, phenomenal album. This is sort of the end of the era. After this, we're on to a whole new Bowie for a while. This was like, we're done. 70s are over. We're going to do a little bit of everything we did. It's going to be eclectic. It's going to be weird. We're moving on. And he did it well. That's my number 1 for this chunk of albums. All right, that's all I got for these 4 albums. Thanks for watching. Let me know your ranking of these 4 albums, your thoughts on these albums, facts you have about these albums that I don't know. You know how it works. Subscribe, like, listen, comment, and go listen to Scary Monsters and Super Creeps. It's a great album. It's a great song. In fact, when I do that list at the end, just to give away a little bit, it's probably going to medal, Not telling you whether it's going to get gold, silver, or bronze, but this album, it's probably going to medal. I'm just going to say that. All right, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Peace. Talk to you later.